celluloid, and we're turning it into music and podcast for you.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of We Came From Celluloid. I'm Nicky P here with Brian Pritchard, and we are parts of Puma Thurman. How are we doing in the world of music and movies there, Brian?
Awesome, man. I just got back from adventuring in Nashville, which they call Music City. And that was kind of interesting. I'd never been out there before. It was cool. They have this part of town. It's kind of obviously like the touristy section called Broadway. Have you been out there before?
I have not.
So this Broadway section is like several blocks of buildings, and there was like a Kid Rock building and a Bon Jovi building and like a Jelly Roll building. Like, I don't know. It was funny because I see a name like Jelly Roll and I go like, well, he's brand new, so there must be some amount of turnover in like what names are attached to these buildings, you know? But anyway, it was cool to walk down an area where you had drum sets and music coming from every door. To go past every door and have somebody playing drums in this like open window was that was kind of unique. I don't really dig the country. We not being a cover band, it's sort of like we wouldn't have a home in that part of town. It had occurred to me. As a musician, you go like, oh, it would be interesting to have a gig. Like I was eating lunch at the one place and I'm watching this band and I'm going like, oh, so you're the morning shift, right? Like that means you're, I guess, done with your day at like a normal time, right? Like that like it seems like one of the few areas maybe where like you could have an easier time having music be your 9 to 5 and have it literally be a 9 to 5 if you wanted it to be, which is kind of a bizarre concept. But
Well, I've never quite understood the economics of it because you're in a place where, yeah, there are more gigs to go around, but the concentration of musicians is so high that most of those guys I don't think actually make money like I do here when I do solo gigs and like cover shows. They're doing like it's just a different scene entirely. You're there basically to practice and hope you run across the guys to start writing with to make your your original album. Almost kind of like the reverse of what you might normally do up here. You're out there and hope to find somebody you can go make money with. But yeah, it's a weird town in that way.
it's funny. I at one point saw I literally saw this girl with an acoustic guitar like thrown over her back, walking around snapping photos by herself. Right, really young girl, acoustic guitar on her back, walking around taking photos by herself, and it just had such a fresh off the bus vibe to it. You know what I mean? Like like I guess this is another place that you just come to as a musician and try to make your singer-songwriter come true, right?
That's exactly what it's going to get to, is because obviously we've done this forever. I've known people on both sides of that trip.
Okay.
People that fresh, like I'm going to make my mark. I'm going to the town to do the damn thing. Like those people that back in the '70s would, hey, we're going to go to Hollywood. Well, they instead of going to Hollywood now they go to Nashville. And I've also been on the other side of that trip where you see them after they gave up on Nashville and they realize, you know what? Sure, like Cleveland's not a big market, but I'm somebody in Cleveland. It's often difficult to go and like, you could be a medium-sized, fish here. You can be a big fish, but you go and you're the smallest of tadpoles in a city like Nashville, and like to go and swing it out at that level, you're in the majors officially. It's like, yeah, you're good for somebody in Cleveland, but then you realize like what good gets you in Nashville is like a pat on the head and like, hey buddy, get in line, pay your dues.
Well, so there's the perspective of making it, right, and going like, yeah. Like I wasn't even thinking about it so much from that angle as I was just from like I don't know. This is a goofy way of putting it, maybe, but like I was going like, oh, that's a place. This is a place that I could retire, and instead of being a Walmart greeter, you could be a fucking drummer and make money. You know what I mean? Like it's odd, because that's not true in like most cities in America, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of. Uh, I personally play cover shows. I don't mind doing it. I like performing. It doesn't really kind of matter to me what I'm performing. Maybe there's some things I wouldn't enjoy performing, but whatever. I'm going to take what I can from whatever I'm given. But I've had people like, oh, I could never do cover shows. It'd just be so boring. And I'm like, work in a factory for 8 hours every night for years on end, and you tell me how boring that is. And then tell me you wouldn't kill to go and play guitar for 8 hours or for 3 hours a day while drinking and get paid better, and tell me it's boring still. Who cares if it's boring? It's
Well, I wouldn't want to work in a factory either, but and it's different. Like
well, I'm really like, this is conversations I've actually had. Guys I know that do this and complain, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, you say you could never do it, but this is what you're really saying you would never do. And it seems silly to me that anyone would take that equation.
Well, and I'm thinking of you as a singer too, right? That you're a great singer, and the idea of I've watched you do a set of covers, and it's just, to me it's maybe a little bit different. Like if you're a bass player, if you're a guitar player, like I don't know. For me as a drummer, I just think it would be mind numbing in the way that a tedious job would be mind numbing to do like 2s and 4s for 4 hours. Like I don't know, it seems stupid.
Well, while you say that, Brian, I want you to know that there's many a cover gig where I'm watching the Family Guy or American Dad on the TV behind the bar as I perform, because, oh great, Brown Eyed Girl again. Oh god, now I have to perform Don't Stop Believing a fucking again. I don't like the song the first time again. Why am I still doing this? All right, that's because I'm going to get a fairly nice paycheck at the end of the night, and singing is still better than working in a factory. Like, I honestly, it is, like, for me, that is so much of what it is. It's like, there are way worse jobs out there, and, like, I've spent years, to me, it's like, it's paid practice. Like, while I'm doing this, I'm getting better at my instrument. I'm getting more in touch with my abilities, and learning how to do different things. And it's like, very few other things in the world can you get paid to rehearse. And so I always just broke it down that way. Yeah, you're not playing the exact songs that you would be playing, and you're not writing, but once again, if you're sitting in a factory sweeping shit up or throwing stuff into machines, you're doing nothing productive. Certainly not for you. At least in this, you're producing for yourself.
Well, yeah. Hauling gear is annoying too. Again, like that's the other luxury that you vocalists have. And I understand you've brought lights and other things here and there, but theoretically, a singer just gets to stroll in and be the talent. You get to engage with the crowd, and they're all looking at you, all excited. I don't remember if I mentioned this in one of our prior.
We've already established that I don't get to engage with the crowd last episode, remember?
No, well, I was trying to remember.
None of them talked to me.
What's that?
We just established that none of the crowd talks to me after the gig. So I get ignored. Just the monkey, the dancing monkey. On stage, it's different. I do get to engage the crowd on stage, but I don't want to engage them on stage. I want to engage with them afterwards. They tell me how awesome I am. They don't ever do that.
Yeah, I haven't worked like a merch stand in years. I used to be real disciplined about sitting with that notebook, and I'd shout to Brian when he was singing, for Dome from the kit, and be like, "Hey, tell him to meet us at the merch table and sign up for our email list." I don't know, working those calls to action into the show, right? Before I knew what they were.
Well, so I sent you guys a message this week. None of you have really, really delivered on it, by the way. You gave me a couple ideas, most of which I don't even know the hell they are, but I'm going to have to go find them. But I'm trying to. One of my big things that I've wanted to do with the band, and maybe this is a good place to start talking about. So, like, we're talking about the band as a career, the band as like a money making thing, and the band as how do we make this do something? You know, you and I have been playing music since we were. I'm gonna say on the outset at least 14 or 15 out in like the professional sense, and you know the big. Yeah, exactly. The big complaints are always, well, you need to know how to make money or to do this. And we're both from marketing background, and we said the internet exists. There's no way it's possible to just not be able to find a way to monetize this skill and find a way to make money on it. And so our very first point was like, so we're gonna find a way to make money doing this. Now, granted, that was 10 years ago, and we really haven't cracked that nut yet. But we haven't worked that hard at it either. It's been kind of, we'll follow an idea, follow this, follow that. But one of the things that like I keep coming back to is we need to offer something different for sure. Songs are songs, good songs are good songs, and if somebody wants a good song, they can sit at home on YouTube or Spotify and find all the good songs they want to their heart's content because they already found them. But to do what we want to do, we need to perform. We need to have a show. We need to have an experience that people need to come for. And, there's always sometimes, like, as the lead singer, you kind of find yourself in a position of, I'm singing songs, but what more can I bring to the table? Obviously I have other skill sets in that I'm a guitar player, bass player. I played a bunch of instruments in a bunch of other bands, and I've been the auxiliary guy and, not say ran turntables, but ran sequencers and things like that. And so what I've really been looking for is what can I do to kind of take my role to maybe more of like a master of ceremonies type place. And so I messaged you guys looking for, in particular, like movie quotes. Because what I want to do is like kind of, I don't ever want the onslaught of stuff to stop while we're performing. And so, I want to make it so like we have interstitial material on stage. And what I thought would be fun is, if nothing else, like maybe we have like a TV on stage that's just running video of what like I'm playing, the clips that I'm playing and stuff. Ideally, it'd be a giant screen at some point to really send it home. But to expand what we're doing is kind of like, so let's go find some of our favorite movie quotes and just kind of like place them around the songs, make like intro, outro kind of material with those, so that I can trigger them and just play them while I'm doing what I'm doing. Maybe come with my little quippy one-linery kind of zingers that I like to put in there to build the show into like a narrative kind of thing. And as you're saying, hey, meet us at the merch table, it's like, meet us at the merch table to talk movies. Why don't you come and tell us what your favorite movies are? Like, what ways to get people engaged in the conversation that like we're kind of starting. And it's, once again, kind of for us falling back into this place. It's like, let's meet people where they are. Let's talk to them about the things. It's why we started, doing the whole gimmicky movie thing anyways. Is like, because we love movies. So let's kind of take the performance to the next level with that, and utilize that as a way to experience more.
Well, it's funny. There's a couple things that yeah, no, that hit me there. I was playing around with found footage, to call it that, music videos, with hooking VCRs together, right back in the day. I have examples of that I was doing in like 6th, 7th grade, where this was taking. It's funny, like how much, being a movie lover, my mind is full of moments, right? Like imagery and moments, and the ability to say for any given piece of music, certainly of ours, here's a collection of imagery and clips that feels like it belongs with this material, right? Out of existing stuff. That's always been easy to do. That there's this notion in a world of letting perfectionism intrude, like there's the sense of you don't own this stuff, right? That there's stuff that's copyrighted, and it's like, well, do you take the time to to put stuff together. Certainly from a, I'm less worried about it from a performance standpoint than I am from like making a YouTube music video. But um, yes, I love the idea of having footage going the entire time that we're performing. I even think about like one of the images that came into my head when you were talking about that was I thought about Natural Born Killers and how much like they have like text and different things like appearing on their bodies as they're playing. Like the idea of us even being part of the screen, like that images are projected onto us as we play is of interest. I also like you remember the Dark Side of Oz thing where it's like you could watch Wizard of Oz and sync it up with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and you know what I mean, and there's all these like synergy moments. I remember I've been excited.
Oh, so you don't see the giant Pink Floyd poster behind me. It's just out of view.
Well, and I don't think that
Clearly, I know what you're talking about.
I don't obviously it's like that wasn't in their minds when they were writing and recording that album. It's just those sort of happy accident things. But I've been playing that game forever. It's one of my favorite games to like queue up a playlist of like, you know, weird music video imagery and then mute it and then hit shuffle on like, you know, my favorite songs and then see how imagery and music intersect. So no, I mean anything and everything related to music and imagery coming together. My the original thing to me about combining movies with this band is in part what an easy source of creative inspiration I guess it can be, you know. I in part really have always liked the idea. I'm so tickled by the notion that we've played around with a little bit of hiding. I like the idea that somebody can listen to a song or read its lyrics and be really confused by what the fuck we're talking about. That I think is really, really funny. That you'll either be really baffled by it or you'll be excited because you get it. But the song will always be the song, and I want the song to be enjoyable. And I like the idea that people can apply their own meaning. I don't care that anybody ever like cracks the code, you know, to and in some cases, obviously, we would make it super, super easy. Like when we're saying, you know, I want to hold you with my scissor hands, it kind of narrows down the list of possible references. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, bringing the show to life. You mentioned the, you know, having a dedicated image operator would be cool. If you want to take on that job to some degree, that would be cool because, you know, anything else requires either.
I'm already there.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
know, you don't have to pay me another cut.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember Kevin Farley in Third World Leader had that pad full of different like samples and shit like that he would trigger. So is that what you were talking about with like movie clips?
Yeah, that's what I'd end up doing. No, I it wouldn't just be the clips. Like obviously, as a studio guy, I would go through and like create montages of stuff. But
Yeah, or as you said, things like interstitial stuff that connect moments, like things that fill in the gaps while we know we're going to need a break for tuning and stuff like that. I've always resisted the urge, on the one hand, to I like being able to change up the set list. I like being able to fuck with tempos. Um, and so there's parts of the like polished performance where you are getting into synchronizing stuff and putting in-ear monitors, and I'm not opposed to it. And I think there's some real,
my goal is to avoid that as much as possible. Frankly,
yeah, so selfishly, I've always liked just that feeling of it's still just kind of a free form jam. It's still tonight's performance, if you're gonna witness it as a player and or as a spectator. Tonight's performance is gonna be a one-off, and it's gonna be different than tomorrow night, you know?
Well, deviating too much from that like gets really dicey. Like the more things necessary to create the minimum viable product, the more difficult it is to guarantee quality at a certain level every night. In particular, so great band STR, FKR, Starfucker. Went and saw them at. They were playing headlining at the Beachland, and that particular night, their Arduino that controlled their light system went out, and like their lighting, they had a big screen behind the stage and a lot of things that were supposed to happen. But 30 minutes before set time, it quit. And so it was this very intricate performance with light show. Suddenly just became a bunch of guys playing music in a room. And you could tell it knocked them off their game because that's not what they're prepared to bring to people. They're prepared to do something elevated. And, you know, they're caught in that scramble for, well, what do we do now? How do we put on the same level of show without, you know, all the stuff? Because they didn't have. They ended up finding someone at that show that managed to fix it for like the next concert. They could like reprogram their Arduinos and whatever. But you know, for that night, they're out. You know, and we're a band who's used to performing with a bunch of stuff that you can pay attention to. That's not us. Now, mind you, they're a bunch of nerdy guys. And so suddenly, that was part of the issue that people are now going to pay attention to us, and we don't like that. We want them paying attention to all the other stuff.
Well, and that actually connected me to, like, you know, whether it's Kiss or Slipknot or Ghost or fucking Sleep Token, right? Or there's this history of that sort of act too, right? Of going like, no, we're hiding, we're mysterious.
Did you really? I'm sorry. I've got to cut you off. Did you just put Sleep Token and Ghost in the same like lineage as Kiss
and Slipknot? Yes, that is the exact order. In fact, it goes Kiss, creates Slipknot, creates Ghost, creates Sleep Token, in that order. Yeah. What did I miss? Why are they wearing their gimmicky fucking costumes otherwise? It's like boy bands. It's like Jackson 5 creates, you know, New Kids on the Block creates In Sync, creates what was Harry Styles' band, the fucking British one that was, you know, creates One Direction, and there will be more. The costume and the masked scary guy band, yeah, no shit. Kiss to Slipknot, yes. Ghost, Sleep Token. What do you object to in that? Because they're fucking better musicians now? It's still fucking cheesy as hell, you know?
Oh no! I prefer my cheeseball of the Kiss and Slipknot variety. The fact that you like would sully either of those names with Sleep Token or freaking Ghost, two of the worst examples of performances in the world. That hurts.
Well, Ghost to me maybe seems, and I haven't looked all that closely. I like Ghost's music. Ghost to me seems maybe to have a little bit more of a sense of humor, is where, just to finish the thought, right? They both seem pretty self-important.
I mean, you'd have to be able to perform that shit overnight, night after night.
Well, but even like what I've heard of Ghost almost reminded me of Lady Gaga, where I go like, oh, if you just heard this as a song, it's really generic pop music. It is only through the heightened persona shit that it is worth anybody paying attention to, right? That without the meat dress, who the fuck is Lady Gaga? Really? Like, you know what I mean? Like, a talented singer, like, as if that's special, you know what I mean? Like, and I say that at going like, yeah, I think of that Pantera. There's a lyric from, I'm trying to remember what song it is. Maybe Yesterday Don't Mean Shit, where he just says like, gifted with talents and no big deal. You know, it's like, Yeah, there's a lot of talented people in the world, so what? I don't know.
Well, and that's always a weird thing to realize. I come from a very, very small place, and where I come from, I'd be very, very talented. I moved to Cleveland, and I'm sort of talented. But I go to Nashville, and I'm like somebody no one would give a shit about. Like, come on, buddy. You got about three to 10 things that you better up the game on before you're even considered like worth putting on a stage. Get with the program.
No, I've had that thought, even though I consider myself, an excellent drummer. I think that there are people like Primus was looking for a new drummer recently, you know what I mean? And so in listening to their songs, I was thinking about when I've been a hired gun for like local bands, and I've done that a number of times. I did it for Family Riot. I did it for a group called Skycheck. I did it for Third World Leader. But in all cases, I sort of had the luxury of being kind of a pain in the ass about it. You know what I mean? Because I'm sort of going like, hey, I'm a good drummer, and I'm gonna approach the material the way I feel like approaching it, but I don't want to have to worry about being like slavish to every fucking hit and every fill and everything. If you were gonna have to take over for Primus at like that level of act, I assume you actually kind of do.
There's expectations.
Yeah, man, then it's like you're gonna learn the fucking material so that the people watching are hearing what they expect to hear. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just come in and be like, doing your thing,
I would actually argue in that particular instance, that's probably less important than you think. Because at that level, there's nobody that's bothering to try out that's not going to be able to nail the material if given the opportunity. What they're looking for is someone that they're going to mesh with. Like someone that's going to not be kind of a pain in the ass to deal with for at least the next tour and hopefully longer. Because anytime they have to replace a member, it's a pain in the dick. Like, you got to get used to playing with someone. They've got to get used to just the personalities, even aside from everything else. Like, the timing. And the stakes are a lot higher.
But there are guys, I assume, who are better at being a hired gun, even, is a part of what I'm saying, that I've known guitar players like that, too. One of the first guys I jammed with, this guy, Bill, Bill could listen to like any guitar solo and almost immediately recreate it, and and like really busy ones, and amazing skill. I would not consider him a good songwriter, but he was like a fucking world class mimic. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, that's its own.
So 15 years ago, like when I fucked up my life once and moved back home with my parents, it was jamming with these 16-year-old kids. I was in this interesting place where, like, I was doing, it would have been, I guess, metalcore at the time. And so, like, these 16-year-old, I mean, they may have been like 14 or 15 to be completely honest. But these kids, like, were, product of divorce, is what I was describing. Like, their parents have been trying to show them that they love them with the best guitar equipment and lessons money could buy for years, fighting over them. And they were fucking unbelievable players. Like, just sweep arpeggio, all the cool guitar stuff I always wished I could but never learned how to do. Because I had to do things like get a job and, like, make my parents appreciate me. At any rate, so I'm jamming with these kids that have all of this manual dexterity and could, like you said, by ear pick up anything you've ever wanted to be able to play. No questions. But, like, when it came to writing, all they've got is scales. They've got scales and they've got, like, breakdown. Like, let's just cool breakdown. And as an adult, essentially performing with much younger people, there was an element of, like, what I took my time to do is like, okay, guys, you can do shit that I wish I could do. But I'm going to stop and teach you phrasing. I'm going to stop and teach you how to write melody. I'm going to stop and teach you how to do all this, like, how to actually write a song. as opposed to just string together, these technical exercises, which, is interesting if you ever followed, Protest the Hero back in the day, and like follow them as a band, like how they kind of started out, and their first records sound very much like kind of like a stringing together of just technical stuff, and they were like, I want to say like 16 or 17 when they recorded it in high school, and then once you had to go and learn how to play all of the crap that they recorded as a record, and it's always interesting when you find this place where people get the performance and they get the nuance of the technical, but they don't understand what they're doing, or they don't have like the skill to take it to the next level and write.
I guess to me, it's always stemmed from I don't know. There's an inclination I have with anything that I really, really moves me in a deep way. I have two simultaneous reactions. One is, when can I feel this way again, myself? And the other impulse is to share it with others, But music, first and foremost, is a communication tool, right? And that having been on the receiving end of being moved by music, that to me is the excitement in creating something, is the hope of somebody else being on that same frequency, right? That it's like, this is my best effort in trying to articulate a vibe, a feeling, an emotion, an idea. Cause even that's sort of a weird thing. Like, I'm thinking about that new song that I don't even know that we have much of a name for it. I think I call it 1212 on the demos, and we threw it into that punk show set list. Anyway, that song to me, that's what cool sounds like, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like, there's a mood there of like strutting. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a cool strut feeling. It's a vibe, and you're trying to capture that vibe and then bring that vibe to life. I've also had moments, and it's not like I did not in that instance sit down and go, what does cool sound like? I just must have been feeling kind of cool, and that's what came out. But I have sometimes tried to intentionally take a feeling and that doesn't have like an outlet and give it an outlet, right? Like, if I'm ever stuck sometimes just swimming in a feeling, sometimes it's amazing to ask the instrument that question, right? Of going, well, what does this feeling sound like? How could I articulate this vibe through this tool, in this case the guitar? Anyway, I'm rambling a bit, but yeah, when the highly technical people,
You have a very different relationship, because most of my feelings are, I don't know. I spend 95% of my time in a state of thinking and perhaps not feeling. So for me, like, I like things that are contemplative. Everything I like is contemplative and perhaps more architecture than it is art.
see, the intellect I associate with language and constructs, and I value it very, 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 very much. But it has almost inherent limitations of being an invention. Whereas emotion to me has like a truth and purity to it. Even though I know you can poke logic holes in that statement, right? Because emotion, it can be produced by a lot of different things. But that's still my feeling on it. I do feel like words.
Well, and no, and that's what, maybe that's what, because I'm, as an academic, linguistics being my favorite part of all of that, and unless we get like religions and stuff, but it's in language where magic happens. It's in that place where like this isn't what these are naturally supposed to do. These are communication tools. So when you can find beauty or interesting things in these very sterile elements, that's magic. That's like almost better than like just being able to produce an emotion, I guess. Of course you can go and find a way to like make things sound cool or make them sound dark or make them sound happy and excited. But when you can take that to like do that with language and words, there's something like maybe maniacal or like evil laugh about.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you about its power. It's just I think words are subjective. They're inherently and always going to be subjective to the individual. Whereas, do you know if I say Adagio for Strings by Barber? Do you know what piece of music I mean? Do you know Adagio for Strings by name?
It sounds familiar. I'm sure I do. I like to hear it, but offhand.
If I say the Platoon song, does that help?
I haven't watched Platoon in a long time, my friend.
Well, if maybe that's how we end this, is that we'll have to pull up Adagio for Strings. But my point about Adagio for Strings is this: no one could ever mistake its intention for anything other than what it is. Adagio for Strings can only evoke the feeling that it evokes. You would never No one could ever hear that and go, this is a song about joy. You know what I mean? No one could ever hear it and go, this is a song about strutting and feeling cool. It's like the idea of even as a film composer, right? That sort of concept of going,
Well, that's because you don't know about how pendulous my balls are. Well, so I just want to make one note as we're having the discussion about lyrics and music and kind of the that is also why Brian is very capable of writing like a million songs in a weekend, and I am the bottleneck for why we don't put more music out because it takes me forever to come up with anything I'm happy with. Do any of that music lyrically. I'm always searching for something at the edges of my grasp. Is this the next gem? Is this the thing? And I'll toil over that one word forever. And then ultimately we just throw something in there that like makes sense because I have a deadline to hit. But it's always good to know that I'm trying.
yeah, and I don't know. I err on the side of don't let perfect be the enemy of progress. That seems to be a pretty universal thing. I listen to a lot of commentary tracks. I read a lot of interviews, listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's like people need to call things done at a certain point. Be like, yeah, it's the meal's fucking ready. Let's put it on the table. Let people eat it.
Well, two points to make with that. Number one, what's funny is that one of my favorite bands in the world wrote explicitly nonsense for lyrics. If you've ever paid attention to Built to Spill, like what the fuck are they talking about in anything they write? Nothing. He just, which is, I have the skill to do that. And that if you ever pay attention, like, well, to let the cat out of the bag, folks, at least half of our performances at any given time, there are no lyrics to half the songs. I'm literally on stage just mumbling nonsense, convincingly. Quite convincingly, but it is mostly just stream of consciousness nonsense straight from the dome, and some of that stuff will in that stream of consciousness is where I find what becomes the melody and the meaning later. But like it's all melody, no words, so it's like you get the idea that you want, and that's to my understanding how Bill Spill wrote all their songs. But the other thing I was going to notice is in the effort of just call it done. That's why I love handing things off to somebody else at the end of things. Like, hey, I need you to call this done for me or for us. So I'm waiting with bated breath to hear what comes back from our friend over at Suma Studios with our our current song, Stay Gold Pony Boy.
Well, me too, man. And I was thinking even with maybe an aim that on the surface has some silliness to it, the idea of writing like movie themed, novelty songs, like, to me there's real poignancy in the stuff you've done, and on occasion where I've at least contributed like foundation ideas, that is the place that I'm coming from. Like the Children of the Corn ideas, there's stuff in there that feels very raw and very true about the nature of addiction, for example. But it is also literal and about the plot of Children of the Corn, right? But it is also this other thing to me. But I don't care that you know that. I don't care that anybody else knows it. But like,
Well, I want to know more about that because I have ideas for the song, but I have yet to come up with like the real underlying meaning behind it. And so knowing that there is something else in there more than just the movie would definitely give me a firmer jumping off point to kind of take it. Because especially with a good horror movie song, man, there's so much that's in there. Like the things I could say about any of the Freddy Krueger movies about all kinds of topics.
well, yeah, no, and I don't know. There's that progression in the like B part where it's like I had that call and response idea where it was all I wanted was a drink so I could taste it. All I wanted was a smoke so I could wake it up. All I wanted was the blade so I could spill the blood. All I wanted was a wide-brimmed hat. That's that's the part that really throws them. But the build-up is like this, like progression of the voice in your head making a suggestion and listening to it. It's like, go on, have this, and you're going, all right. And then it's going, go on, have some of this. And you're going, all right. But then it's like, now you're talking about, okay, yeah, vices, drinking, smoking, these are vices. At the point that you're picking up the knife, what does that mean? That's fucking dangerous. And then because I don't want to be so serious and super dark, I like the twist, the literal and take from it what you will symbolism of ending it with the wide-brimmed hat, because it's like, well, what does that mean when you adopt the hat?
When you mean you mean the moment you become the cult leader, and you lead others down the path that you're walking. And well, now I mean, add to that now imagine the folly of youth, man. Like the idea of like childhood impulse and like just giving in to all of the impulses, and then eventually, you find yourself leading a life that no one wants to lead, and destruction is the only outcome possible.
So he who walks behind the row, right, is it's that voice, right? It's that little needling voice,
I'm gonna have to sit down with that one. We're gonna have some fun. Anyways, folks, thank you for listening to our meanderings and our little discussions here at the cross-section of music and movies, and the cross-section of people that make music and, want to invite you into our little world. So once again, thank you for listening to We Came From Celluloid. Have a good day.